What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. We did it. After this review is uploaded, I will have reviewed every single Best Picture nominee at this year's Oscars. It has been a wild, very fun, very joyful ride. I've loved talking about all of these movies with you guys. Thank you for all the love and support in the comment sections. It truly does mean the world. And today is our grand finale. Yes, indeed. I have been reviewing all the nominees, and today we are reviewing the final nominee, which also is the film that took home the big boy, took home the golden statue for Best Picture, and that film is, of course, Oppenheimer, written and directed by Christopher Nolan, the one and only. This film tells the story of J. Robert Oppenheimer, known as the father of the atomic bomb. It chronicles his journey of fascination with quantum physics, his participation in the infamous Manhattan Project and the creation of the atomic bomb, and all the political and personal turmoil that ensued before, during, and after the infamous bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Guys, this was my most anticipated film of 2023. In fact, I think it's safe to say that this was probably my most anticipated film of all time. I love Christopher Nolan. I think he is one of the best directors working today. I think he has made tons of movies that will be considered classics in time. Also, Cillian Murphy is one of my favorite actors. I love him in Red Eye, I love him in Batman Begins, and I particularly love him in Peaky Blinders, which, by the way, I know everybody knows this, but it is an amazing show, and if you haven't seen it, you should go watch it. If Oppenheimer was your introduction to Cillian Murphy, as I'm sure it was for a lot of mainstream audiences, and you really loved his performance and you want to go see more of his good work, go watch Peaky Blinders. It's incredible. Also, I just thought the story that this film was going to be telling was just so intriguing and riveting on a political, dramatic, and existential level, and you guys know I love movies like that. And this is gonna surprise no one, but obviously the movie did not disappoint, so let's get into it. But if you're a new reviewer and you're not familiar with how I structure my reviews, we're going to start with the negatives because I personally always prefer to end on a positive note when it comes to film and filmmaking, so let's get into it. Thankfully, I don't have to dwell on the negatives for too long because I only have one, and that is that this film, just given the nature of everything it's telling and how much of Oppenheimer's life it's exploring and the various intricacies of it, there is a lot of information being thrown at you constantly, almost entirely through dialogue. And it's also a 3-hour epic, a political and dramatic epic at the very least. And so because of that, the story at points within the film does become hard to keep up with, a little hard to follow. This might seem ludicrous to say since the film is already 3 hours long and a lot of mainstream audiences can't really handle anything over 2 hours, or 2.5 hours is really pushing it, but I actually would have liked maybe another 20 or 25 minutes just to pace out certain scenes a little bit more so I could like keep up with the story a little better. But I will say, upon rewatch, it became fully understandable to me. It is definitely a movie that I think a lot of people will grow to love more on a second viewing, especially with subtitles now that it's available for home video, which, by the way, yeah, you bet your ass I picked this bitch up on 4K. I ordered this I actually found one because apparently on like opening day for the Blu-ray sales, all of the 4K Blu-rays just sold out within like a week or a couple weeks or like maybe a month or something. That is unheard of. That's history right there. That's an achievement. I still have yet to watch the film in full 4K restoration, but I'm very, very excited to. And by the way, this is a really good Blu-ray package. First of all, not only does it have the best poster of the movie on it, but it has an insane amount of special features, and this is what I love. You got the 4K disc, you got the Blu-ray disc, 2 individual discs for both of those versions of the film, and then, my favorite thing, a whole disc entirely dedicated to the special features. That's what I love to see. I am one of the few Gen Zers out there that fucking adores physical media and routinely collects it and really loves shit like that. which is why my gripe with this Blu-ray packaging, my only issue with it, is that it didn't come with a slipcover. Still looks sleek, still looks good, we're getting away from the point. Let's go ahead and get into the positives, because as you've probably guessed, there are a shit ton. The first thing that really hit me about this movie on rewatch is that from the very beginning, literally the opening shot, you are in it. It immediately hits you with incredible cinematography, performances, and music, which all remain constant throughout the entirety of the film. It's also brilliantly paced from start to finish, which is kind of a miracle, especially when you factor in the fact that this film is 3 hours long, and it's really, for the majority of that 3-hour runtime, just a bunch of conversations between people. I mean, that is a monumental achievement, but it is non-stop, and I just found it consistently riveting from start to finish. The entire cast here is absolutely excellent. I honestly think anybody in this movie was deserving of an Oscar nomination. And of course, yes, Cillian Murphy is mesmerizing as Oppenheimer. He won Best Actor at this year's Academy Awards, and it is well deserved. His work as Oppenheimer is fierce and ferocious and beautifully subtle. Subtle probably isn't the word you expected me to use after using words like fierce and ferocious. But it's true, I feel like this performance should be thrown into the bin of performances that people look to as the blueprint of how to master a performance through subtlety. It is genuinely such a good example of how to perfect that art. But also Matt Damon, Emily Blunt, Florence Pugh, Robert Downey Jr., who also took home the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor. Everybody is really just giving it 150% in this movie, and it shows. So much of the reason the movie is so riveting and why this long series of conversations that makes up the majority of the runtime is so intriguing and never really gets boring except for a few moments is, I feel, because of how amazing these performances are. It's just impossible to look away from the screen. Speaking of aspects of the film that make it impossible to look away from the screen, the cinematography by Hoyt van Hoytema, who is quickly becoming one of my favorite cinematographers, right up there with Roger Deakins for me. Hoyt van Hoytema is also the one who shot Nope, and I believe a couple of Jordan Peele's other films. Just the use of camera movement and lighting, it is so exhilarating, really makes it impossible to look away. This movie is a 3-hour eyegasm. The score by Ludwig Göransson, everybody's already talked about it. Also, sorry if I mispronounced that name. I legitimately feel confident in saying that I think this is one of the best film scores of all time. Can You Hear the Music in particular is astonishing. And speaking of that score, it pretty much, I think, makes up the vast majority of the runtime. This is a 3-hour movie. Cumulatively speaking, I feel like there's probably only 10 minutes in total of this movie where that score is not playing. Usually in other movies, that would annoy me. I'm like, okay, like, I get it, the score's really good, you're trying to show it off, but like, you don't need to use it in every single scene. Like, not even just like individual pieces for each scene, but like pieces that take up like a full 30 minutes of the movie, transitioning us between several different scenes. But with this movie, the score is just so fucking good, and the way they utilize it in all of these scenes and the way the movie is edited and cut together, literally all the aspects of the technical side of the way this film is made just coexist with each other so beautifully. They all link up with each other and fit like a puzzle, perfectly put together. It is such good filmmaking, and you can tell that everybody working on this film understood the job, they understood the assignment, and they got that assignment done. I would say that nobody was on different pages here. Everybody was on the same page, and it shows. This score is genuinely masterful. Also, I gotta talk about the scene in this film where the atomic bomb is tested for the very first time. It is some of the best filmmaking and subversion of expectations that I've ever seen in a Nolan film, and honestly that I've ever seen in any film. The choice to just rest on these visuals and cut out all audio completely, not even a score. This is one of the few moments in the movie where the score is not used. It just completely makes your heart sink into the floor. You really feel the drama of that moment. It's the most dramatic moment in human history. The fact that they were not entirely sure that the entire world wouldn't end when they pushed that button. The chances were near zero, but they weren't zero. They literally in the movie are like, all right, there's a chance that when we push this button, that chemical reaction is not going to stop and we will destroy the entire world. It will spread across the entire globe and we're going to end the human race. And they pushed that button. name a more dramatic moment, or at least a more tense moment with this, where the stakes were just as high throughout any period of human history. I dare you. I do think this is Nolan's, possibly his most introspective film yet. The way it explores the inner workings of Oppenheimer's mind, especially after the bombings of Hiroshima, I'm sorry guys, I'm American. But especially after that monumental event, which thankfully Nolan does not actually show on screen. I think that would have been insanely disrespectful and honestly in very poor taste if he were to Hollywoodize that particular event. Really enjoyed that choice, and especially what he does instead, showing how this is affecting the version of Oppenheimer depicted in this film, how that haunted him, what that blood that he felt he had on his hands was doing to him psychologically. It is so, as I said, haunting. It's genuinely disturbing. The film doesn't shy away from exploring truly how complex of a man this was. There were people who had concerns that it was going to be glorifying J. Robert Oppenheimer, the guy who is widely considered, and mostly considered by pretty much everybody in the world, as the father of one of the most evil things humanity has ever invented. But thankfully, Nolan approaches this situation with a refreshing level of nuance, and I would say a lot of objectivity, by showing various different perspectives while still not shying away from showing Oppenheimer's perspective. You understand him, and as I want to keep disclaiming, the version of him portrayed in this movie, you understand him, but the film is not asking you to necessarily support him or endorse him, and I don't feel like the film itself is supporting him or endorsing him in any way. As I said, this was one of the most dramatic, intense moments and lives in the history of mankind. Of course Nolan was gonna make a film about it. Also, upon rewatch again, I've truly come to adore the editing. It was something I was iffy on the first time I watched it, a lot of that due to the fact of, like, what I mentioned earlier with like how much information is being thrown at you constantly, but upon rewatch and watching it with subtitles when I was able to hear 100% of what everybody said, I truly have come to love how the film is edited. As I said earlier, I think it's so much of the reason why the film is so consistently riveting throughout. And the way it cuts back and forth constantly, back and forth between various moments and periods of Oppenheimer's life, is truly masterful. The writing here is also some of Nolan's best, if not his best. I cannot fathom that Nolan, on his lonesome, wrote this movie. Just him by himself. He just wrote this shit. What the? I cannot comprehend that. It is so hard for me to write a full, completed script for a short film. He wrote a 3-hour political drama epic. What? The dialogue is sharp, natural, and always interesting, and it gets to the point where, like, these scenes that are literally just conversations between people have the same adrenaline rushes as you would find in any given action film or thriller. I would almost feel comfortable classifying this film as a thriller. The film also does such a good job at injecting you with this looming, gradually building dread. A truly horrifying dread that builds up and comes to a head in what is possibly my favorite ending to a movie ever. The ending leaves you with this very deep, disturbing existential notion of not only what happened, but also what could happen in the future and what probably inevitably will happen. It is one of the most powerful moments ever put to the screen, in my opinion. It made me cry the first time I watched it, literally sobbing, not just a single tear. We're talking like tears streaming down my face, and it was no different when I rewatched it today. It didn't lose any of the emotional impact, even though I knew it was coming. The gall and the audacity that Nolan has to end this massive multi-million-dollar budget blockbuster with that is so admirable to me. It is genuinely soul-crushing and completely devastating, and if you've seen the film, I'm sure you agree. That is a moment in the movie theater that will stick with me for the rest of my life. The film does not shy away from leaving you with the most dire, devastating warning, one of the most urgent films of last year, hands down, probably the most urgent, I would say. So guys, in conclusion, I believe Oppenheimer is Christopher Nolan's magnum opus. This film is everything we go to the movies for. It is big, bold, absolutely riveting, and a dire and urgent warning to the entire world population. Its deeply introspective and nuanced exploration of politics, Oppenheimer's mind, and the impact he had on the world left a mark on me and the world in a way few films have ever accomplished and probably will ever accomplish. Guys, thanks for sticking with me throughout all of my reviews of these Best Picture nominations. I truly appreciate you watching. If you're interested, please be sure to check out the Headspace Podcast, now available on all podcast streaming platforms and most namely Spotify and Apple Podcasts. I recently did an episode, it was episode 4, where I talked about the film Leave the World Behind, and I also had my first guest on. Her name is Kendall Jackson. She is an actress and soon to be content creator in her own right. We had an awesome in-depth discussion about conspiracies, politics, and aliens. So check that out if you're interested. I'm working on episode 5 of that podcast right now, completely solo, just me, as with most of the episodes, where I'm going to be talking about David Fincher's 2011 film, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. So excited to talk about that one with you guys. Also, if you're interested in reaching out or following more of what I do, you can follow me on Instagram at @TheXavierReichbaum to follow all of my personal and creative endeavors, and also with my second account on Instagram, Headspace Productions, which is the official account for my production company, Headspace Productions. So what comes next after this? Well, you guys can look forward to new videos very soon. Gonna be talking about possibly some other Oscar nominees, as well as some more recent releases, and also returning to doing some long-form videos. I know you guys liked those. Guys, thank you so much as always for watching. I will see you in the next video, and until then, keep writing, keep shooting, and keep editing.